So I finally had an opportunity to unpack and move into my room. I'm in the same house as earlier this summer, but I'm in a different room now. And I don't know about you guys, but I tend to design my room according to an unconscious pattern in my psyche. That's Neptune. I don't know if you can see the symbol up there, but yeah, and just this just sort of came together. Uh, um, this that is my bell, and I guess I put it there so that upon exiting, you might experience or be reminded to experience a bit of excitation, a bit of a reminder of the benefits of enjoying your existence. Because I think a bell really enjoys its existence. It really doesn't have to do anything except sing when it's asked, ring when it's tapped. And the human being, I think, is designed somewhat like a bell. We're made to resonate with those whom we come into contact with and to produce music together. Uh, and so, but really, the bell is could be a reminder of any sort of pathway of symbols, such as the one I just rang off. So every time I ring the bell, I'm reminded to become excited upon exiting, and whatever comes to mind upon the ring, that hopefully will help me out the door and with what happens in between uh, entering and exiting again. So now that we've moved in, what to talk about? Well, I don't know. Eventually, I want to talk about this a little bit. Um, but not yet. I wanted to talk about philosophy because I was just visiting my friend Phil. His YouTube channel is pdballiet, and hopefully he'll want to engage with some of these ideas on YouTube because we talked about it for the last I don't know, like 36 hours or something together. I visited him in Stanford, and a lot of good ideas came up, and I wanted to reflect on some of them publicly to share what I think was maybe a provocative and insightful, potentially, conversation that we had privately. Um, and the idea concerns, well, I guess most generally, possibility, possibility and actuality. Um, and you could perhaps even suggest that these are the two most basic metaphysical categories that the philosopher has to work with. Or at least, if you wanted to have a certain type of discourse about the nature of reality, you could begin with this dichotomy between possibility and actuality. Um, how do we engage with this difference, though? Uh, well, the possible is um, the not yet, right? It's that which hasn't occurred but might. And in some sense, it has a kind of necessity, though um, it is a necessity of a possibility. It is a sort of determinate possibility. The future is, that is. Now, the actual is the past rather than the future, the possible. The actual is that which has already happened. So the possible is the not yet, the actual is the already. And we, the living, I would say we, the cosmic community uh, of creatures, human creatures, cellular creatures, all the animal creatures, plant creatures, bacterial creatures, molecular creatures, chemical creatures, the atomic creatures, subatomic creatures, um, and so on. The living community of the universe. Uh, we are in this sort of in-between process of presencing, in between possibility and actuality. We are the universe. We are all together created again and again and again and again and again in an Ouroboros way, as the Ouroboros, this mythical so-called creature that Plato talked about in Timaeus, that I suppose is an alchemical symbol for the infinite, or perhaps for the process of infinitizing. The infinite isn't a static substance, it's a dynamic process which is always becoming more like itself. So, we know since Cantor, Gregory Cantor, I think, the mathematician, that there are different uh, grades of infinity, and I think this applies in a cosmological sense to the actual universe, in that it is, we say it's expanding, but it's also uh, contracting or coiling in upon itself as it expands. And that the coiling in is happening so quickly and is already so tightly wound that it becomes consciousness, it becomes spirit, which is what the human being is. Look at the very morphology of our bodies and of our nervous system. It's tightly wound. It's the tightly wound fabric of space-time itself. It's energy memorized by matter um, that has been literally informed, grown, and made by the uh, astral, stellar, interstellar spaces, of which we are still in the gestation, in the gestating womb. We are in the sun, and the sun is a growing being with a life cycle. We are one of its organs, a very important organ, perhaps its heart. And in this sense, Copernicus sort of, in inaugurating the modern understanding of space and the sort of de-centered and disoriented character of our consciousness, perhaps there is some truth to the geocentric understanding of the way the heavens go. Maybe the earth isn't the physical center, but is the metaphysical center, where all our thinking must begin. And perhaps if we want to avoid the abstract discussion that philosophers can get into about what sort of school of thought one belongs to, whether one be a realist or an empiricist, or a skeptic or an atheist or a creationist, or whatever, Buddhist, who maybe isn't even interested in philosophy except so far as it eases one's sense of attachment and so degree of suffering. But if one wanted to avoid all of that, one could just look at the life of things, and then come to express it willingly, Uh, this sounds kind of stoic, I think. I think the Stoic would probably, or let's even say the Spinozan would say that everything is determined already and absolutely necessary. The future is not under your control as a particular being, because you as a particular being are just a piece of this larger substance, this unified organism. And if you align your will with the will of this organism, you are infinite. You are whole. You contain all things because you are contained by the one thing. It's pretty convincing, actually, when you think through this line of reasoning. I don't think it is enough. I think there's something more to be said, but if one hasn't, in becoming Copernican and Kantian and modern in the sense that one is no longer convinced by the so-called beliefs and dogmas of superstition, sort of religious ideology which controlled the human past, but instead one has become modern by growing up, becoming an adult, thinking for oneself. And this would often mean having a sort of, not necessarily cutthroat, but at least pessimistic outlook on the goodness of nature, the moral value of the non-human world. Certainly one who is modern could value human existence in a very strong way and be a very liberal humanist. But still, the natural world, the cosmos, is a neutral, blank machine of some kind that we are supposed to use technologically for our own human ends, because all values are human. The human is the only trace, the only one capable of tracing signs of intelligence into the dead stuff of the universe. That's basically where you end up if, well, you're not a complete Spinozan, but you're still emphasized by this sense of the determined causal interconnectedness of all things. Because that's true, obviously, but until you experience it, you don't realize that, well, yes, the many are one, but so is the one in each of the many. Because in understanding the one as one of the many, you become the one. So Spinoza's philosophy is not the same thing as experiencing what Spinoza was describing in his philosophy. But then we're still left with the possible and the actual. And so long as you're going to try to make a living as a philosopher, and so engaging in the conversations that other philosophers have been having with one another, what are we to say about possibility and actuality, and how are we to approach it? We need a method, right? To approach this conceptual dichotomy and understanding how they relate to one another and how they should be defined and activated or employed in the world. And, I tend to prefer a phenomenological approach. And by that I mean a sort of, I guess, Husserlian and the Heideggerian attempt to get to the, to get to what shows itself, rather than what I think is there, or what, based on habit, I assume is there. Phenomenology, in my sense, is a sort of radical uncovering of what was always already present in your experience. And phenomenology for me is also a response to the fact that experience always leaves more